Hello, I'm Lysander. I just wanted to talk about this thing real quick. I don't ascribe to the idea of soul contracts. I think it's a toxic belief in the new thought system. And when people are looking for a form of spirituality that works for them, this is something that is one of the first ideas that one comes across and is um, very much a part of it. And I take issue with the idea that Source, the All, the universe, this all-powerful force would have to resort to evil in order to teach lessons. I feel that diminishes it, for one. Another thing is that I feel that whether that's the intention or not, it condones evil by saying that it's part of an agreement or contract. And that, you know, I've talked to so many people who are in pain and confused because they talk about these horrific things that happen to them, and they don't understand what lesson they're supposed to be taking from this or why they would agree to it. And the answer I have for them is that they didn't. That people choose to do evil things, and that's a difficult thing for people to stomach, especially when it concerns a parental figure. We'd rather believe that somehow good was meant by the other person, or that our suffering serves a purpose. And this is not meant to be grim, but we should hold people accountable for their actions. I feel that it's spiritual bypassing to say, well, it's part of a plan. The things, the bad things that happened to your life, you did not ask for them. You did not agree to them. You did not make an agreement with someone else. I don't believe that we choose our parents. I don't believe that we make arrangements to enact situations out with other people. I believe in free will and that life happens spontaneously. I do know that that's kind of part of that whole belief, but as a medium, someone who's crossed spirits over and watched them go through the entire process, there's no life planning. There's no agreements. Patterns that occur between people and attachments are frequently the result of past life patterns, which is rather akin to, say, patterns from your childhood. Something happens as a kid and you kind of repeat that relationship dynamic, for example, as adults. So it's sort of that same idea, which is not at all the same as the two of you sitting together and making a plan to meet up again and to enact a little play, basically. So I believe in empowering people. I feel this idea is dangerous because it disempowers people. It says, well, you just have to put up with your contract now, or you made this agreement to learn this lesson. It's like you have the free will to do something else, but then you won't learn your lesson. And I think it's bullshit, frankly. Each of us has a destiny and a potential. I think this idea is not just dangerous and spiritual bypassing and disempowering, but I feel it's an actual trap that'll keep you trying to analyze and figure things out where there's nothing to be figured out, and keep you attached to people who are poison to you, in the belief that something is supposed to be accomplished here. Like occasionally the idea of karmic connections or contracts comes up. And my conception of karma is more cause and effect. If you hit a glass, it's going to fall off the table and shatter. It's not a punishment for hitting the glass. It's the natural result. So in that sense, sure, yeah, that happens in relationships. Such and such happens, and the person decides to react in such a way, you decide to react in such a way, and the situation unfolds naturally. There's not a cosmic balancing chart that needs to be evened. So I just wanted to get that out quickly, my thoughts on that in brief, so you don't have to think I've left anything out. I've seen no evidence of this existing. Some people come here with a very specific reason, but that is not the same thing. And sometimes specific people do have an agreement to accomplish something here, but typically that's between them and the higher divinity, like for example, a goddess or ascended master has given them a specific task. But again, that's not the same thing as what's usually talked about in soul contracts. Like again, when people are talking about, oh, you picked your parents and they were going to raise you this way. And you know, people talk about this like situations of like abuse or sexual assault or all these like horrible things, and I can't see how it's acceptable to in any way justify these things or say that they were divinely intended in any way. We have free will. We have the freedom to make choices, and people choose to do evil things. That is not the same thing as the supposedly perfect, enlightened spiritual beings agreeing to torture each other for the sake of development or for a higher benevolent being of any kind deciding that. Based on the examples I've seen and people who come to me contemplating this, and even people who fully believe that, what they describe, I can't help but see that spiritual bypassing, not wanting to go through the difficulty of seeing that the other person did something wrong, especially when it's someone close to you. There's so many ways we evade feeling like our parents, just an example, are bad people by any measure. We'd rather believe that we're bad or that we agreed to it in the in-between lives, or whatever way to get around it, rather than simply mourning the reality that they're bad people and that they didn't love you. But other people will, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And I think it's ironic, because even while this belief says you agreed to this, you created this, it's also so disempowering, because it's like the sense of this was always going to happen no matter what, and it's outside of your control. It's like intended to be reassuring, but the actual effect I've seen on people is that it torments them thinking this. And again, from my own perspective, at the end of the day, it's my opinion and my point of view, but I know that a lot of people are so distressed by that idea. I just want to put a different idea out there, that they don't exist. It's not a thing. It's not part of a great plan, all this suffering. It's simply people and their choices. And we have a choice on how we want to carry those experiences or to not carry them, or how we want to handle them. You have control for how your life and path unfolds. It has not been set for you in any way. And later, in other times, other places, I'll talk about, how we do create our lives, kind of similar to the idea of law of attraction, but more nuanced. But it's not the same as this idea, because it always seems to come up to justify evil, to justify someone suffering some horrible thing. And it's toxic. I just think it's a toxic idea, rather than believing that your life is fully in your hands now as an adult, and that you didn't ask for the things that happened to you, but you can heal from them. You don't have to be defined by them. You don't have to stay connected to people or believe that somehow magically they intended well, and just live with the truth. The truth can be painful, but it's also a relief, not having to pretend or to do mental gymnastics to somehow magically make it all okay and make the bad people from your past all okay, and for it to all mean something. Your life does have meaning, but your meaning doesn't have to come from something like that, from saying that all the bad stuff was arranged. It's hard to accept the ways that we don't have control, to accept that we were powerless as children. But that's not the case now. So I'm going to wrap this up. I hope maybe that's helpful to somebody. Obviously, I'm not intending to change anyone's mind, just to put out an alternative voice for people for whom that idea already doesn't sit well with them. So, bless, and I'll see you all again soon.